makes it even better, we've got Jeremy Gray. So it's not a Gray Friday, but it kind of is. But it's a happy Gray Friday as Jeremy joins us from Indiana, the new voice of Assembly Hall, I guess we could say. But you've known his name for quite a while. Jeremy, how are you, man? Welcome.
We're doing well. You know, though, I'm kind of ready for the weather to turn a little bit. Like next week looks like it's going to be like 85 and gorgeous, but a little over the 58 and damp.
I've been waiting for a month, man. I've been ready for a month for this. It seems like it's been like this. But Jeremy is the Senior Associate Athletic Director for Strategic Communications, his official title. But he also over the Cuban Center at IU. But also you'll be hearing his voice a lot more frequently as he will take over for Chuck Crabb officially beginning next year. Those are big shoes to fill. Not that you don't already have a big enough job, but now those are some big shoes, man.
Yeah, you know, I always think of the movie 61, where they didn't like Mickey Mantle for 10 years for replacing Joe DiMaggio. So I'm thinking I'm no Mickey Mantle, and but I am following Joe DiMaggio. So we'll see how the fan base reacts.
Are you going to keep the? I'm assuming you're going to keep the sophomore because it seems like it's added into your. You've kind of been able to adopt it in a way that does not seem cheeky or cheesy. It just seems like it fits right in.
Well, I think it would be a nice nod to Chuck.
Yes.
Obviously, I'll deliver it in a much different way, but I'll make it 3 syllables, I think, going forward.
It's a must-have. But like I said, you did it in a way that already that you can tell that it's homage, and it seems to bring it adds a little something. People seem to like it. They like it.
He did it well for 46 years. Why screw up something that's been going well?
That's my next question, man. So are you going to be able to do this for 46 years?
No, and actually the gentleman before him did it for 45. So I think I'm the third person in the history of the invention of the microphone to do public address announcing for Indiana basketball. I don't think I can last that long, but hopefully I've got a nice 25-year run in me and happily pass it off to somebody else at the end.
So you're only the third person in over 90 years to do this.
Yeah,
that sounds like being. I don't even know what that sounds like being because there's nothing. I don't know if there's anything else that even comes close to that.
No, it's unbelievable. And Chuck has been extraordinarily gracious. He was gracious at the end of the year. He came into my office and just said, "Do your own thing. As you're subbing, you don't have to." Do an imitation. It did touch me that you did the sophomore thing, but make sure you make it your own. And then he sent me a really nice note earlier in the week when it was ultimately announced that I was going to be doing it going forward. And, honestly, I didn't have really any intention of doing this. But in the last couple of weeks of the season, some of the feedback, was nice. And Scott was asking me to do it. And, frankly, it was about the second half of that second women's basketball game in the NCAA tournament where it's going back and forth. The place is going crazy. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. So, after that, talked to my wife and ultimately decided that it would be something I'd want to do.
You got to be there anyway. So it's not like you're asking your wife for permission to be away more than you already have to be. So you had that going for you.
I did. It's 40 games between the men's and women's games. I mean, it's a large commitment. It's one that you can't call in sick for unless you're really sick. But I'm excited to do it. I go to the most of the women's basketball games are required to be at the men's basketball games. It's actually just 4 feet over from where I normally sit for the men's basketball games. So I'm really, really excited to dig into it. And as the end of the season rolled along, it kind of grew in my mind as something that, I'd be willing to do.
And when you consider the men's and the women's, that is a commitment. 40 nights. If you think about it, you're already working. And if I had to be someplace 40 other nights, that would be hard to know that not one of those nights could I plan to do something else. That if anything else in life comes up, I've got to put that off. That's nuts.
Well, I don't want to make it sound like, coal mining or
no. I'm just meant to commit.
But it was a commitment, and I did have to talk to my wife. I've got a 15-year-old and a fourth grader, and they've got their own activities and things that you want to be there for, and just wanted to make sure that I wasn't screwing up the important things in life by committing to these 40 nights. But we figured that we were there for most of it anyway, and that we'll find a way to work it out. The cell phone's a beautiful thing. They can record, Jonah's occasional basket, or Zoe doing well in a competition or something like that. So I could watch it later or communicate with them. And frankly, the kids got a real kick out of it at the end of the year too.
Tony does bring up a good point. Did the guy before Chuck, was he using a megaphone to start out with?
No, he was straight microphone the whole time. And Chuck, in his note that he sent me earlier in the week, said, for the first couple of months, he went through all the McCracken years and the early Bob Knight years. So he was associated with a ton of success that, Chuck had to carve out his own way in the early going, and wanted to offer his support for me, as, there will be people who will miss Chuck, and rightfully so. He's an absolute icon. And frankly, my goal at the end of the year was to have no one deflate my tires in the parking lot after he came, because I wasn't Chuck. And I at least passed that test. But yeah, no, he did not. He was not a town crier or on a megaphone at the beginning. I think Mr. Dawes, was straight up on the microphone from the mid 1930s on.
Who does football, and why have a different person doing football and basketball?
So the person who does football is Rob Lauer, and I think he does a nice job, and he's really made it.
He does awesome.
Yeah. Chuck did it for 25 years or so. I think people don't realize this about Chuck. He had huge responsibilities throughout the department. I mean, he was a one-man keychain and fuse box. Like, he's the only guy who knew where a lot of this stuff was. So he had a huge responsibility outside of the public address work. I also think, with that, that they found somebody who provided a new voice in football. And Rob's actually been doing it a long time. I think he started in the Jerry DiNardo years, and he's kind of carved out his own niche in football. And I think he brings a lot to the table that way.
He does. The fans love him. He does a great job. It's nice to hear a different take on it, and everyone have their own style of doing things. So I was just curious as to that. I knew that, but because you always hear that different voice, and it's just always to try to get a glimpse of who they are behind it. He's kind of an unknown figure. You have been around because of what all you do, of what your job entails. At least I see you around and what I do. Maybe a lot of the fans don't get to, but I do, because you work, like I said, at the Cuban Center and with the SIDs. So we get to see you a lot more. The fans, they see you, but not always know who you are.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the reasons I was a little reticent to do it, because I kind of like not knowing who I am. And I was in broadcasting for a long time. I did play-by-play at Notre Dame, and then did some play-by-play here and some sideline work for the Big Ten Network. And I teach a sportscasting class here on campus, so I've got some experience doing it. But it's been a while, and it was something that I had kind of not moved on from because I didn't love it, but moved into it in an administrative capacity, and that's more of a behind-the-scenes role. I really hadn't thought about, becoming the public address announcer here. But I was the guy down the hall who could do it when Chuck retired mid-season. I ended up liking it. Scott asked me to do it. Got nice feedback from the players and the coaches themselves on both teams. And frankly, there was a former player, we're remaining confidence, who actually said something that really resonated with me. They said, when Chuck announced my name as in the starting lineups, it meant a lot to me, and it's a big part of an athlete's experience. And you've been around for a long time. You love the place. You know us. You love the athletes. It's important that whoever does this is somebody who really cares about the place. And asked me if I would do it, and I was genuinely flattered and touched by it. And then, frankly, that second half of that women's basketball game, where it was going back and forth, and big shot after big shot, I'm like, this is a good time. I enjoy it. I enjoy it. So then, I talked to Scott afterwards, and I said, Scott, I know that you asked me before, but I think I'm willing to do it.
Well, familiarity always makes things better, especially when fans they like things that familiar. They like things that they like, and we have all come to know that. Are anything that since you did a couple of the men's games this year, obviously filling in for Chuck there at the end. Anything that you're thinking about adding in your repertoire for next year that fans can look forward to?
Yeah, so there are three, I think, iconic sports brands in Indiana. This is no disrespect to some other schools or to the professional franchises, but I call them like heirloom programs. One of them is the Indianapolis 500, one of them is Notre Dame football, and one of them is Indiana basketball. And this is something that people's great-grandparents cared about and rooted for. This is a generational type passion. And people could talk about recent success or whatever, but this is something that goes back generations. And so you need to have a respect for the building, a respect for what has come before. I'm going to bring a more contemporary style and sensibility to the job, I think, than what Chuck did. I've always said that Chuck and Bob Shepard, who was the public address announcer for, I think, 65 years for the New York Yankees, they might be like on a 1 on the scale, where a WWE announcer is a 10. I'm going to come in at about a 5. I'm going to bring, a little more volume to it. I will definitely be more of a homer, but Chuck's stately, classy, regal approach is something that, commands respect. And I don't think me becoming some sort of, carnival barker and announcing 3 while the other team is completely dribbled down the court and has already gotten off another shot while I'm still saying 3 is necessarily appropriate for the building. But definitely going to bring some juice to the starting lineups. And I think people will listen at the end. I said the same thing for both sides. When they would score a basket or when Indiana would score a basket, I would say the same thing, but I just did it at a much different volume with a different level of enthusiasm. So I'm going to be somewhat journalistic in the way I describe things, but I will definitely be more fired up when Indiana scores a basket. But I think it's important in that building to respect that building and not become, an over-the-top thinking that I'm the show.
And it sounds like it's going to be fun. And as we've talked about a lot of things today in regards to Indiana basketball that are going to be more fun. Indiana, you got a home schedule with Kansas already. We saw that now they're looking at adding a game with Arizona. That's not completed yet to our knowledge, but that's in the process of being added. So a lot of excitement coming with Indiana basketball next season already. And it sounds like there's going to be a lot more with you behind the mic.
I talked to the person who replaced Kaywood Ledford at Kentucky a while back when I was still doing play-by-play, and I was like, when did they accept you? And he's like, well, they accepted me when we won our first national championship. So I am so excited. I mean, we're looking at 2 teams that are going to probably be top 20 teams next year. It's the best era of women's basketball by a factor of 10 in the history of Indiana women's basketball. And it feels like Indiana basketball is starting to feel right again on the men's side. And so I might be jumping into this thing at the right time. It wouldn't be bad to go 40-0 in my first year as the PA guy.
Boy, howdy. Has there ever been a time that Indiana women's and men's basketball were ranked at the same time? Because I know there's not been that many times a women's team program.
I believe it wasn't all that long ago. And it was like maybe a week or 2. But yes, there have been times where they've been ranked at but not a lot. Not a lot. But I feel we're gonna add to that week total next year. And I am really excited about it. Love both staffs. I think fans are really connecting to both sets of players too on a personal level. And Woody gets the job. Obviously there are things that fans would have liked to have turned out differently, so far this year. But, you sit there and you're talking to him about his camp, and he's like, oh, yeah, we're having camp. That I went to Bob Knight basketball camp. This is a big part of my upbringing. We're gonna totally go over the top and make this great for little kids. And I'm like, this is a person who understands the presidential nature of the Indiana head men's basketball job. Frankly, going out and throwing the first pitch at that IU baseball game at Victory Field the other day, and then
threw a strike.
All the players
threw a strike too, baby.
He gets the job here.
Yeah, and he threw a strike, and he enjoys being a part of it. And I agree with everything you're saying. The women's and men's basketball, they could go all season next year ranked together. I mean, Indiana men's program obviously expected to be better next year than this year. And I think that they're going to start the season ranked. Obviously, the women's program, they could possibly be, if it's even possible, they might be better next year, as crazy as that is to say. I never thought that I would say that after last season's team with who all they had, but they have, Terry Moore has done a hell of a job in replacing the ones that she lost.
Yeah, she needs to start writing her Hall of Fame speech because she's going to make the IU Athletics Hall of Fame for what she's done with that program. But yeah, I think they're going to have, two highly competitive teams next year in the top third of the Big Ten with the chance to compete for the Big Ten championship in both. It's not my job to go lay out expectations for the teams. I'm not the sport administrator for either program, but it's an exciting time, and success tends to breed more success. And you see a nice first year, obviously with some ups and downs with the men's program, but it has resonated on the recruiting trail, and they're getting players, and people are wanting to be a part of it, and it's really an exciting time.
You may not be able to answer this because of just not want to, but I have said that Grace Berger, I think, is the best women's basketball player to ever play at Indiana, and she's not finished yet. But she has just the best all-around women's player that I have ever seen here and that I have ever known of at Indiana. And I think she's going to go on to do great things once she's finished at Indiana. But I just saw someone throw a comment up about her, and I'm like, gosh dang it. I love watching her play.
I was the play-by-play voice for women's basketball here from 02 through 14. And I don't want to hurt the feelings of some remarkable women that I traveled with, all that time. And obviously, the George Washington type figures for that program, I think would rightfully be Amanda Cahill and Tyra Buss, and they set a ton of records. But if you talk about all-around skills and what they can bring to the court, I don't think there's ever been a player as versatile and as good top to bottom as Grace Berger. And, it's funny. I was texting back and forth with Tyra Buss in the tournament last year, and I'm like, yeah, it's a little chippy. And I was at the game. I went to San Antonio for the game. Like, yeah, it's getting a little chippy here. Grace is John back and forth with them. And Tyra Buss goes, if I were Grace, I'd be John back and forth too. So even the great ones know how great Grace Berger is.
She's a baller, man, and she's just fun to watch. It's fun. It'd be fun to watch them again next year, and it'd be fun to watch them with you behind the mic, man. Looking forward to it, as well as the men games as well. So congratulations again. Good luck this summer as you prepare to take the reins, I guess, for good.
Yep, I'm gonna buy a lot of Hall's Mentholyptus and some green tea. Just work on the vocal cords, and we'll be ready for action next fall. And there is no replacing Chuck Crabb. There's just succeeding Chuck Crabb, and hopefully it's a great environment for our fans, for next year and years to come.